Hi, my name is Brianna. And last Sunday, my mother laughed while calling me poor. In front of my entire family. They raised their wine glasses. I raised a contract. The first sign should have been the chairs. My parents never rearranged furniture, unless it was for something they considered serious. Growing up, that meant tax meetings, college rejections, or Camille's pre-launch brunches. But that Sunday, there were 7 dining chairs pulled into the living room, all in a semicircle facing the fireplace, like it was the witness stand in a courtroom. I walked in with a store-brand salad in one hand and a hostess gift in the other. No one looked up. "Put that in the kitchen, will you?" Mom said without even glancing. She was wearing that beige linen blouse she saves for passive-aggressive events, the kind where she wants to look expensive but effortless. Dad sat with a whiskey glass, already half empty. Camille was perched on the edge of the couch, like she was mid-commercial for her future wellness empire. I stood for a second. "What's going on?" Camille smiled, a little too wide. "Family meeting," she chirped. "Exciting stuff." "Exciting?" "Right." I set the salad down in the kitchen, washed my hands, came back out. Everyone else was seated. I was left with the folding chair from the basement. It creaked when I sat. A metaphor, maybe. My dad cleared his throat. "We've decided," he began. "It's time to sell the house." He said it the way some people say they've booked a vacation. Final. Pleased. Silence settled. My heartbeat didn't spike yet. It waited. Camille jumped in. "There's an investor from California. He's willing to pay above market because of the lot size. And with that kind of capital, I can finally open the flagship studio." I blinked. Flagship studio? Mom nodded like it was obvious. "Camille's salon. We've been helping her pull the business plan together. This funding could really anchor her brand. Location, equipment, marketing." My voice came out flatter than I intended. "You're selling Grandma's house to fund Camille's hair studio?" Mom sighed like she was already tired of me. "Don't make it sound like that." "Make it sound like what?" "Like we're being selfish," Camille cut in. "This helps everyone. I mean, some of us are actually building something." That was it. The turn. That twist in her voice. The dig she'd been saving. I opened my mouth, but Dad beat me to it. "Brianna, no offense, but you've always struggled with financial stability. You've made choices that, well, didn't pan out." Mom chimed in. "Not everyone's meant for entrepreneurship, and that's okay. You're more of a gentle spirit." Gentle spirit. A phrase they once used when I came home crying after being bullied in middle school. A phrase they used again when I left a toxic job and moved into a basement apartment. It's always the same translation. Weak, soft, not enough. Camille smiled like it was funny. "Some people thrive. Some just maintain. It's fine." I looked at all 3 of them, glasses half raised, polite faces, words polished like knives. My hands didn't shake, my throat didn't catch. I just reached into my tote and pulled out the manila envelope. I placed it on the coffee table between the candle and the cheese board. No dramatics. Just a soft thud. "What's that?" Dad asked. I looked at Camille first. "Do you know the name of the buyer from California?" She frowned. "Yeah, A. Carter or something?" I nodded slowly. "That's right. A. Carter. As in Brianna Alexis Carter." Mom froze. Dad blinked. Camille tilted her head like the air had just dropped 10 degrees. I let the moment stretch. Then, "I'm the buyer. I've already closed. The house is mine." The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was recognition. The kind that slices deeper because no one saw it coming. "Not from me." Mom broke first. "You're joking," Camille scoffed. "You can't afford this place." Dad leaned forward, face darkening. "How did you even—" "I've been saving," I said simply. "While you were busy telling me to do better and think smaller." I was doing exactly that? Quietly. Camille stood, her voice rising. "This is manipulation. You waited for us to make plans just to ruin them? I met her gaze. You made plans without asking if I wanted to be part of them. So I made my own. Dad's voice cracked like splintered wood. That house has been in the family for generations. I know, I said. That's why I bought it. To keep it from people who treat it like a pawn. Mom reached for her wine like it was a lifeline. You always were dramatic, Brianna. I almost laughed, but I didn't. I just stood up, picked up my bag, and said, I didn't come here to fight. I just thought you should know. You're trespassing. Then I left. And if the door made a noise when I closed it, it wasn't a slam. It was a line being drawn. If you've ever been the quiet one in your family, the one they didn't count on, what would you do in Brianna's shoes? The strange thing about being left out is that, after a while, you stop noticing the absence. You just start building around it, like a house with a missing wall. You learn which way the wind blows and stack your furniture accordingly. I didn't realize how good I'd gotten at that until the ride home after the family meeting. I sat in my car, parked 2 blocks away from the house I now owned. I hadn't meant to walk away without fanfare. But when I stepped out the front door, nobody followed me. Not a single word was thrown at my back. No demands, no apologies. Just the sound of Camille's heels pacing the hardwood floor, and Mom asking Dad to open a second bottle. The sky was still that shade of steel blue that only happens right before a Texas thunderstorm. And for some reason, all I could think about was 5th grade. Camille had gotten a bike for her birthday, glossy pink, streamers on the handlebars. Mine had a loose seat and no brakes. She got to ride hers on the driveway. I was told to stay on the street. You're better at watching for cars, Mom said. You're more careful, more sensible. Even then, I knew those were just nicer ways to say less fun, less important. I remember a Thanksgiving, maybe 6 years ago, when Camille stood up in the middle of dinner and announced she was dropping out of her master's program. She had a new plan: start a business teaching manifestation workshops and scalp care. Dad beamed. Mom clapped. I asked, "What exactly is scalp therapy?" Camille smiled, slicing into the turkey. "It's energy work, but for your follicles." That night, they wrote her a $25,000 check to help her follow her calling. When I asked for help 2 years earlier, to cover a car repair so I wouldn't lose my job, they told me real adults learn how to budget. I didn't argue. I just stopped asking. The months before the house meeting had been unusually quiet. I should have seen it coming. Mom started ending her calls quickly. "Love you, sweetie. I've got to run." Camille stopped texting me entirely. Dad sent me a meme once, a photo of a golden retriever in a suit with the caption, "Working hard or hardly working?" No context. Meanwhile, Aunt May, my grandmother's sister, was calling more frequently. She'd started bringing up legal documents in casual conversation. Things like, your grandmother never updated the deed after she got sick. Or, funny how people forget what verbal wishes mean in probate court. I didn't know what she was getting at, not yet. But I listened. And for once, I asked questions. 2 weeks before the meeting, I took a train out to visit her. Aunt May lived in a modest single-story place outside Austin. Her front porch was cluttered with wind chimes, most of them broken, and an old orange cat named Button that hated everyone but her. When I arrived, she was baking a pie. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said, drying her hands on a towel. "I almost didn't," I admitted. "But something doesn't feel right lately." She gave me a look that didn't say "I told you so," but maybe I wish I hadn't been right. We sat down in the kitchen with tea and silence. Eventually, she pulled out a folder. Inside were copies of the original property deed, signed by my grandmother, not updated since the late 1990s. Her voice was soft. "Your mother's trying to move quickly, but legally, nothing's transferred until I sign, and I won't, unless I know it's going to someone who'll actually respect it." My heart thudded in my chest. "You mean me?" She nodded once. "You're the only one who showed up after your grandmother passed, not for the money, just to sit in her chair and water her plants." I don't remember what I said after that. Just that I signed the purchase agreement the next morning. She sold her half to me for half the market price. Said it was an investment in something that might finally be good for the soul. Back in the present, the weight of that moment returned. I stared out at the house from the car, windows glowing warm behind drawn curtains. And suddenly, I wasn't 30-something and calm. I was 10 years old again, watching from the yard while Camille blew out birthday candles inside without me. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "That was a cruel stunt, Brianna. I expected better." Followed by one from Camille. "If you think this is over, you're more delusional than I thought." No message from Dad. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my camera roll, scrolled past screenshots of emails and bank transfers, stopped at a photo I took that day at Aunt May's. It was of my grandmother's old armchair, upholstery worn, arms polished from decades of use, empty but full of something. I stared at that image until my eyes burned. Ever had someone underestimate you for so long, they forgot you were watching the whole time? There's something almost addictive about being underestimated. It gives you room to think, to plan, to prepare in silence while everyone else assumes you're harmless. And the thing about silence? It makes your moves feel louder when they finally land. By the time Camille was posting mood boards for her flagship salon and my parents were drafting family investor pitch decks, I already had the keys in my hand. They just didn't know it yet. It started with a phone call. Aunt May's voice was unusually sharp that day. No sugar in the tone, no small talk. They came by this morning, Cynthia and Camille, wearing matching smiles and heels that probably cost more than my mortgage. I leaned into the speaker. "They came to your house?" "Yes." "They brought lemon bars." Tried to act like we were just catching up. But then they slid the paperwork across the table. Blank signature lines, already highlighted. I didn't respond right away. My chest tightened, like I'd swallowed ice cubes whole. "They thought I'd fold," she continued. "Thought I was lonely, easy to flatter. Camille even called me second mom." My throat burned. "And," Aunt May's voice softened, "and I said no. Told them I'd already had a better offer. Then I told them who made it." Silence. "That's when Cynthia called you a mistake." I didn't realize I was gripping the edge of the kitchen counter until my knuckles went white. "I'm sorry, Brianna. I know that word carries more weight with you than it should." That word followed me for years. When I was 13, I overheard my mom on the phone with her friend Cheryl from church. I'd just gotten suspended for skipping a science project I didn't have the supplies to finish. I remember hiding in the hallway, clutching a library book like it might explain me better than I could. Camille was always focused. Brianna, well, she was unexpected. Unexpected. Unplanned. And later, just plainly, mistake. It was in the way they talked about me, always in past tense, always with a footnote. "She's doing her thing. She's figuring it out. She's more sensitive, you know?" Camille got a graduation party with a rented canopy, custom cake, and a Pinterest-worthy photo wall. I got a grocery store card with $20 inside and a note that said, "Proud of you for finishing." So no, I didn't feel guilty about what came next. Aunt May and I met at a notary office on a Wednesday afternoon. Rain tapped at the windows like it had nowhere better to be. We sat side by side, two women with matching tired eyes and steady hands. She slid the documents across the table. "They're going to call this betrayal," she said. "Are you ready for that?" I didn't hesitate. "They called me worse before I ever earned it." I signed. The lawyer stamped. The woman behind the desk offered a smile that felt oddly respectful, like she understood the weight of what just happened, even without knowing the history. Aunt May reached over, squeezed my wrist once. She always wanted the house to go to someone who saw it as more than square footage. I swallowed hard. "I'm not doing this to get back at them." "I know," she said, "but it's okay if that's part of it." A week later, I filed the transfer. 2 days after that, I changed the locks. And the night before the family meeting, I stood in the backyard alone. The air was thick with early summer, the kind that made the trees hang heavy and the porch boards swell beneath your feet. I walked the perimeter slowly, like I was tracing the past with every step. The cracked brick path where I once fell off a tricycle. The rusted faucet Camille used to spray me with during fights. The window I used to sneak out of when my crying got too loud for the walls to hold. This house wasn't just wood and nails. It was the place I learned how to be invisible. Now it was mine. At 2:18 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Camille. "I know what you did." I didn't respond. 3 minutes later, another. "You're still not part of this family. Owning the house won't change that." She was right, in a way. But what she didn't realize, what none of them did, was that I wasn't trying to rejoin the family. I was just making sure I'd never need them again. Sometimes, the best revenge is reclaiming the space where they taught you to doubt yourself. By the time Sunday rolled around, the house smelled like betrayal masked in lavender spray. Camille had asked for a celebratory brunch under the guise of finalizing the deal with the investor. She'd even sent a Canva invite, gold font, soft pink border, a champagne glass emoji next to the title. A new chapter for the family. Cute. I arrived last by design. They had already set the table in the backyard. White linens, monogrammed napkins, Camille in her pastel pantsuit, pretending not to sweat in the heat. Mom was adjusting a stack of brochures, full-color prints outlining Camille's vision board for her flagship beauty and wellness studio. Dad was setting up a Bluetooth speaker, playing soft instrumental jazz. And Camille? She was sipping orange juice like it was mimosas in Malibu. No one looked up when I walked through the gate. Not until I let the metal latch snap shut. Clink. Camille turned first. Her smile was taut, performative. "Oh, you made it. I wasn't sure if you'd be busy with your books or whatever it is you do." I smiled back. "Wouldn't miss this for the world." They launched into their speech like it was a campaign pitch. Mom talked about legacy. Dad threw around terms like ROI and family values. Camille, standing in front of a foam board with architectural renderings of her future studio, said, "This space will heal people, inside and out. I believe beauty is energy, and this is how we pass it on." She gestured toward the investor sitting beside her, a lean man with a slick ponytail and beige linen pants. "With his funding and the equity we're pulling from the house sale, everything aligns. Our roots become our wings." I almost applauded for the poetry. Then Mom placed a manila folder on the table and slid it toward the investor. "This is the agreement. The property's already in the process of being released from probate. All we need now is a signature." That was my cue. I stepped forward slowly and pulled another envelope from my tote bag. The same one I'd used for court filings, job interviews, and every other moment I was told to dress like I belonged. I set it down on top of theirs. "Actually, you might want to look at this first." The air shifted, like heat rising off asphalt just before a storm. Dad frowned. "What is that?" "Proof of ownership," I said, calm. "Filed 2 weeks ago. Registered under my name. Full transfer completed through Aunt May's share." Camille laughed, high and sharp. "You're lying!" "I'm not," I replied. "And you can ask your investor to check the county database if you don't believe me." The man, Mr. Linen Pants, pulled out his phone. 30 seconds later, he turned pale. "She's right," he said. "The deed's in her name. Camille, what the hell?" Mom's mouth opened and closed, like a fish pulled from water. "You did this behind our backs?" "No," I said. "I did this in front of your silence." Camille pushed back from the table, her voice rising. "You always hated me for being better. Admit it. You've resented me since we were kids." I tilted my head. "No, Camille. I resented being erased. That's different." Dad stood up, towering over the table. "This is your family. This is your blood. How could you just take everything?" My voice didn't shake. "You never gave me anything to take. I built this. Quietly, legally, respectfully. The fact that it shocks you says more about your expectations than my choices. Mom leaned in, her voice low and sharp. Do you feel proud? Humiliating your sister like this? I looked straight at her. I feel like I finally matter. And if that feels like humiliation, maybe you should ask why. The investor stood, muttering something about needing to reevaluate partnerships. He walked out the side gate. No one stopped him. The silence that followed was thick, heavy with years. I let it sit. Then I looked at Camille's foam board, the one with her studio of light and transformation. I picked it up gently, then handed it to her. You should keep this. Not everything has to be burned to be left behind. They didn't follow me when I walked away. They didn't call out my name. Just like all the times I cried in my room, or came home late from a double shift to find they'd already eaten, or graduated without anyone clapping. They just let me go. This time, I didn't stay behind waiting. Some tables aren't meant to be flipped. Some are meant to be walked away from. It took less than 24 hours for Camille to turn the story into a headline. Her version, anyway. The morning after the brunch, I woke up to find my phone lighting up with messages. Some from friends, some from people I hadn't heard from in years. Most started the same way. Hey, is this about you? Camille had posted a video to her social media, slickly edited, natural lighting, her face framed with faux vulnerability. No tears, just glossy eyes and well-timed sighs. Sometimes, family doesn't feel like family, she said, staring directly into the lens. Especially when someone you trusted, someone you grew up with, does something so cold, so calculated, you don't even recognize them anymore. Cut to a photo of Grandma's house. Caption, stolen by blood. The comment section exploded. Family should be forever. Justice for Camille. Betrayed by blood. I should have been angry, but mostly I just felt tired. Later that afternoon, I went to a coffee shop near the courthouse to meet Taylor, a friend from college who'd seen the video before I did. She slid her phone across the table. She tagged you, Bree. Not directly, but she used your initials. She knew what she was doing. I nodded. Of course she did. Taylor looked at me. What's your plan? I sipped my coffee. I don't think I need one. She frowned. You sure about that? She's weaponizing the internet. I paused, then pulled out my phone. I saved a few things, just in case. Old texts, voicemails, screenshots. One, in particular, where Camille told a friend, loud and clear, Brianna is harmless. She doesn't fight back. She just folds. Taylor exhaled slowly. You want me to leak this? No, I said. Not yet. That night, I scrolled through Camille's story again, this time with a colder eye. It was impressive in its own way. She'd crafted a narrative where she was the victim, blindsided by a jealous sister who'd waited in silence to take everything. There was even a piano instrumental in the background. But truth has a rhythm too. So I posted a single photo. Just one. It was a scanned copy of the original deed transfer, signed by Aunt May, stamped, dated. No caption, no explanation. Let people connect the dots. And they did. Within hours, people started asking questions. Who really owned the house? Why hadn't Camille mentioned the legal documents? Why had the original owner's sister signed over the deed to Brianna, not Camille? Someone dug up a podcast interview from last year where Camille bragged about not talking to Aunt May since high school because she was too bitter and weird. And then it unraveled. Fast. Camille tried to pivot, tried to say it wasn't about the house. It was about how betrayal feels. But her tone had shifted. The next video was defensive. The one after that was gone. And by the end of the week, she'd set her profile to private. But that wasn't the point. Not really. The point was, they finally saw me. Not the curated version, not the family footnote, but the woman who kept the receipts, who didn't yell or beg or throw stones, just told the truth and let it echo. The official notice was printed on ivory stock, heavy, precise, impersonal. It wasn't revenge. It was a boundary, formalized in ink. I mailed it certified, even though I knew it would sting more being hand-delivered. But I didn't want to be cruel, just clear. They had 30 days to vacate the house. No exceptions. 3 days after the notice arrived, I got a call from my father. That in itself was rare. He never called unless someone was dying or the car insurance was about to lapse. I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, a message. Brianna, this, this feels unnecessary. Let's talk. Just you and me. Unnecessary. Like being erased from the family photo for years wasn't. Like being told I was the emotional burden wasn't. Like being denied help for rent while Camille was gifted startup cash wasn't. I didn't call back. Later that evening, my mother showed up at the house. She didn't knock, just stood outside the gate like a woman rehearsing a script. I stepped onto the porch, arms crossed. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the driveway. The same driveway where I once waited, backpack in hand, after every school play they never attended. You don't have to do this, she said. I do, I replied. It's already done. Her eyes narrowed. You're better than this. I raised you better than this. I almost laughed. Did you? She flinched. For once, not from guilt, just recognition. Then came the real card. Where will we go, Brianna? Your father's on a fixed income. Camille's business hasn't launched. Do you really want that on your conscience? I stared at her. You had options. You chose control. This isn't about throwing you out. It's about not letting you stay in a space you used to hurt me. She went quiet. I could see it. The reflex to argue, to spin, to cry. But this time, I didn't fill the silence for her. We're your parents, she said finally. That has to mean something. It does, I said softly. It means I expected better. And then I turned, walked back inside, and shut the door. The next morning, I got a letter. Handwritten, from Camille. No return address, no apology. Just 3 lines. You'll regret this. We're still family. Blood doesn't break. I didn't reply. Some bonds aren't broken. They're burned, quietly, over time. And when they're gone, the air gets clearer. Would you let someone stay just because they share your last name, even if they've never once made you feel like home? It took 3 weeks for them to leave. No dramatic goodbyes, no bags thrown onto the lawn. Just a slow fade, boxes packed with forced silence, footsteps echoing down hallways that had never really held my name. Camille went first. She didn't say a word. Just peeled out of the driveway in her leased white SUV like she was escaping a scandal, not a consequence. Mom and Dad left the day before the deadline. A moving truck came at 6 a.m. I watched from the kitchen window with a cup of coffee and no intention of going outside. When the door closed behind them for the last time, it didn't slam. It sighed. The house felt different almost immediately. Lighter. Not in the paint or furniture, those hadn't changed yet, but in the air. It no longer hummed with resentment, no longer whispered with things unsaid. It was quiet, but it was mine. I didn't gut the house like people expected, didn't tear down every wall or burn every relic. I kept the porch light, the one Grandma used to leave on no matter how late I was. I refinished the floors we used to tiptoe across as kids. I took the photo of Grandma and Aunt May off the mantel and placed it in the front hallway, under soft light, like an offering. Some things deserve to stay, not because of who left them behind, but because of who picked them up. 3 months later, I opened the doors again, but not for my family, for women who needed a space, a reset, a room to breathe and feel whole again. I started small, a community co-op for women rebuilding after toxic homes, toxic marriages, toxic jobs, a space to workshop resumes, attend free therapy sessions, learn how to hold boundaries without burning out. We called it The Landing, because sometimes, before you rise, you just need a safe place to land. One afternoon, a woman named Lena came in. She was holding a toddler on one hip and a laptop bag on the other. She looked tired, but her eyes were alert, hungry. I offered her tea. She sat down at the long oak table in what used to be the formal dining room. This place used to belong to my family, I told her. What happened? She asked. I smiled. I stopped asking them to see me. I built something they couldn't ignore instead. She blinked, then smiled back. That was enough. I haven't spoken to my parents since the move out. Camille emailed once. Just a line. You made your point. Hope it was worth it. I didn't respond, because it wasn't about proving a point. It was about never letting someone else write my worth in disappearing ink again. People like to say forgiveness is the final step. That closure requires reconnection. I disagree. Sometimes the cleanest piece is distance. Sometimes the highest act of grace is not opening the door again. I still get flashbacks, small ones. A smell of Chanel No. 5 and lemon polish. A comment that sounds too familiar. A tight throat when I walk through the guest bedroom. But they don't linger. Because now, when I walk through this house, every step says, you're not a mistake. You're not a placeholder. You're not invisible. You are home. Sometimes family doesn't break you in a single moment. It chips away slowly, one overlooked word, one stolen opportunity, one silent dismissal at a time. I didn't reclaim that house to get even. I did it so I'd never again have to ask for a seat at a table that was never meant for me. What I learned is this. You don't have to stay where you were tolerated, hoping to be valued. You can leave, you can rebuild, and you can create a space where you're seen, heard, and whole. But I'm curious, have you ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to love you unconditionally? What did that feel like? What did it teach you? If this story touched something in you, leave a comment. Tell me what part hit hardest, or just drop where you're watching from. And if it didn't speak to you, I'd still love to know why. Was it too real, or not real enough? And hey, if you want more stories like this, ones that speak to the silent strength inside you, hit that subscribe button. Let's build something honest here, together.